I forgot that Cody Rhodes was in AEW.
Yeah, well, because a vicious circle fight.
Ow! That's good shit, pal.
There will be no safe word.
The main event.
Hello, my name is Ed Félix, and welcome to the Jobbing Jabronis Wrestling Podcast, or as our friends call it, holy shit, these guys should get a job. Pete Whitty is off somewhere in the Phoenix wilderness right now, I believe having a fist fight with the manager of his HOA, so he will not be joining us today, but he will be back for our next discussion. So let's jump right into the big news. We all saw what happened last night. Cody wrestled with a broken titty. Seth Rollins lost to a guy with one arm. What is the fallout from this? A basic story is Cody Rollins allegedly partially tore his pec muscle while in that brawl with Seth Rollins on Monday Night Raw. We've come to know that's the kayfabe part of the story, because what actually happened is Cody Rhodes tore his pec muscle clean off the bone lifting weights. It happens. It's a pretty common injury, among elite athletes. What happened after that will go down in the halls of wrestling history as one of the greatest things to ever happen. Because yesterday morning, the reports were circulating, Cody is injured. WWE, along with Cody, did not stop promoting the main event of Hell in a Cell, Cody Rhodes versus Seth Rollins, number 3. The match seemed to be up in the air, yet they kept promoting it. Everybody kind of called off the match, assuming it wasn't going to happen, because how could anybody wrestle like this? It's pretty obvious. Somebody has a serious injury, the match gets called off. Apparently that's what WWE officials wanted too. Cody Rhodes wanted to wrestle, and Cody Rhodes wrestled. Cody Rhodes went out there with a torn pec, and boy, was it gnarly. As I understand it, with the pec muscle being completely torn off the bone, there's really not that much more damage you can inflict to yourself, given that, again, the muscle is already torn off, clean off the bone. So as I've heard some, doctors on YouTube explain it, and they may be doctors, they might not, they call themselves doctors. As I've heard some YouTube doctors explain it, it becomes more an issue of pain management. How much pain was Cody Rhodes willing to take, and how careful was he willing to be during this match to not only overextend and injure himself in another area, but to protect Seth Rollins. And what we ended up getting was a very masterful execution, a very well-worked match, worked around the injury. I know some people were saying, this is unsafe for Cody. Not only unsafe for Cody, but really unsafe for Seth Rollins as well. Well, I don't believe that to be the case at all. There really were no movements during the match where I thought, wow, Seth might actually get, physically injured from having to carry this injured wrestler during this match. That did not happen. Cody barely had to use his messed up arm. I believe it was his left arm. Sold the pain throughout the entirety of the match. Seth actually worked the pec, the injured pec of Seth, the injured pec of Cody Rhodes, and boy, did that look gnarly. And we can argue all day about whether this sets a bad precedent for other wrestlers. That's kind of the common argument I've been hearing. But Cody made the right choice tonight. The right choice, for himself at least, for sure. Why? I'll tell you why. Because what Cody did last night was evaluate the trade-offs. He could have just gone home and rested up for 8 months, hoping he wouldn't completely cool off by then, and losing all the incredible momentum he's built since leaving AEW. He's built a character in WWE that works magically when it didn't work at AEW. But instead, he took the risk, knowing he had a full pectoral muscle tear. He said, F it, I'm going to wrestle the match and do something legendary. I'm going to turn myself into a living legend. And that he did. You know, this was one of the most memorable matches of all time, in my opinion, and it seems like Meltzer agrees with this. What Cody did tonight, in my opinion, is cement himself as the winner of the 2023 Royal Rumble. Not only cement himself as the winner of the next Royal Rumble, but cement himself as the person that's going to dethrone Roman Reigns. That's what he did last night. And we could talk about, you know, being irresponsible and what kind of precedent this sets. But the fact of the matter is that he took a very calculated risk, and it paid off. Just go to the WWE's, you know, Facebook page. Their cover photo is Cody Rhodes, you know, victory pose, fully injured, bleeding pec in all its glory. That match was not unsafe for Seth at all. They seemed to work around the injury perfectly. And simply, the story being told was incredible. You know, Cody went out like the American hero his character represents. And I'm of the opinion that if this happened in AEW, you know, people would have just shat all over it. In WWE, he went out as the biggest badass of all time. This is up there with, you know, Undertaker and Mankind in terms of memorability. It was insane. Something that cracked me up was all the people online saying that the injury was actually makeup and everybody was getting worked. And, man, there's something about... I love myself some wrestling, but the ego protection that goes on with some wrestling fans, just being so afraid of getting worked, is kind of insane. It's a wrestling show, people, right? If you buy into a storyline and somebody makes you believe that they're walking out of a wrestling show, and maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but if you got worked, it's okay. That's what wrestling is supposed to be. It's not going to damage your ego. It's not going to destroy your self-esteem. That's what wrestling is about. You don't have to go out there and make all these crazy theories about how, you know, Cody Rhodes' pec was actually, you know, covered in makeup to try to protect your own ego. It reminds me of all the Marvel fanboys. If you remember WandaVision last year, there was all these people online screaming at the top of their lungs that Mephisto was going to show up in WandaVision, that he was the villain for the WandaVision story. And they got worked because the showrunners never brought Mephisto in. And the amount of ego protection these people were doing when that didn't happen, the dumbness that they felt, is insane. And nobody should feel that. You make a prediction on a show, whether it be wrestling, Marvel, you get it wrong. That's fine. Don't make wrestling, don't make Marvel part of your identity. Doesn't make sense. So there were people out there, you know, screaming at the top of their lungs that the injury Cody Rhodes suffered was fake, that this was all makeup. And guess what? It wasn't. And if it was, well, massive props to the WWE makeup team, because for them to put that kind of makeup on Cody and not only not have it rub off during the match, but to have it get darker and actually excrete blood during the match, that is some top-notch makeup work, and they deserve some kind of Emmy for that. Anyway, the injury was legitimate. The match gave us one of the most memorable matches of all time, in my opinion. Completely badass moment. And Cody is set to have surgery on Thursday. What else could Cody have done? He could have gone home and rested up, like I said. But instead, he guaranteed himself the main event of WrestleMania next year. And very few people can go home from an injury feeling like they're going to stay in the main event, the top part of the card. Because the usual scenario when somebody gets injured is they lose all of their momentum. WWE officials, you know, Vince, don't seem to like people that get injured. Just look at Finn Balor. First ever WWE Universal Champion, coincidentally, you know, against Seth Rollins, who was in this match. Finn immediately cooled off after that. He was never given the trust to carry that belt after that injury. That could have happened to Cody. After all, he's the guy that went off and started the biggest rival promotion to WWE in the last 20 years. So he could have cooled off. He knew. He's seen it happen to people. I'm pretty sure he's close to Finn Balor as well because of the Bullet Club. He's seen it happen to friends of his. There is zero chance Cody Rhodes, being the intense dude that he is, that he was ever going to let that happen. I guarantee you the first thing he did after knowing he had a torn pectoral muscle was ask the doctors how far he could push it, because that's the type of dude he is. You know, if I go out there and wrestle, Doc, what are the chances I'm going to majorly injure myself in another way? And I'm sure he evaluated the risks, and they said, yep, that thing is torn completely off the bone. This is more of a pain management issue for you. We'll, inject you with whatever temporary nerve killers we have so you can do the match, and you will be in excruciating pain afterwards, but you can do it. And what we got is what we got. Cody's going to be a main eventer for years to come. He's solidified himself as a permanent staple of the main event, if he wasn't already. This just elevated him to new heights, and you could argue all day about whether this sets a bad precedent. That doesn't matter because this decision was personal for Cody, and he's legitimized himself as Vince's top guy, probably for the next decade, even after Roman leaves. And that's all I have to say on the matter. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.